This podcast is about introducing our fans to the animals, plants, and other products that we work with at Josh's Frogs. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of our hobby that is refreshing. We want you guys to be successful with the animals that you're keeping, and we want our hobby to grow ethically and sustainably into the future. Welcome to the Josh's Frogs podcast. Today I got Rick. We're going to talk about Borneo Eared Tree Frogs. But before we do that, just want to let you know that the Josh's Frogs podcast is brought to you by Josh's Frogs. We're the one-stop shop for all your reptile and amphibian needs. We breed all the animals here on site, from frogs to lizards to snakes to tarantulas to crabs, all that kind of stuff. We carry all the feeder insects you need to take care of those types of animals. And then we carry all the dry goods from lighting to caging, whatever, and as well as the live plants to do that as well too. So we're your one-stop shop for all that kind of stuff. We have customer service agents available to help you out, as well as tons of videos, blog articles, that kind of stuff. We want you to be successful with what you're keeping. So check us out, joshsfrogs.com. Without further ado, welcome Rick to the show. We're going to talk about Borneo Eared Tree Frogs. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about how long you've been at Josh's Frogs and what you do here at Josh's Frogs.
Yeah, absolutely. I started here in July of 2020, so it'll be 4 years this summer. I work in the tree frog and toad departments. Primarily, I do the younger animal care, froglets and tadpoles. Although there are a few species that I take care of all the way into adulthood as well.
Cool. And the 4 years you've been here, we've done some changes in our facility, and we've brought on species and moved away from some species. Tell us a little bit about, like, what are your favorite things that you've worked with here at Josh's Frogs? What's your favorite species, maybe favorite tadpole or favorite frog? What's kind of the as you look back at the 4 years, what were your oh man, that was fun.
So, for adult frogs, I'd say the Medusa bicolor are my favorite. I actually did an episode with you a few months back on those guys. They're just a lot of fun, very handleable. You can hand feed them. They're great little big frogs, actually. The Borneos are actually one of my favorites as well. They're just really unique looking. And as far as tadpoles go, they're one of the most striking tadpoles.
Cool.
I love them for that. And then if I had to pick a third, I'd say milk frogs. They're just vibrant colors, beautiful animals.
Cool. Now you mainly do the tadpole side. Like, you're the main person in that tadpole room. Can you talk us a little bit through, like, what does that room look like? How many gallons of water? Like, walk us through some of that kind of stuff. Like, what is it like working with tadpoles here at Josh's Frogs?
Absolutely. It's so we have racks and racks and racks of 40-gallon aquariums full of a bunch of different species of tadpoles, all on these large sump systems. So I mean, we've got literal thousands of gallons of water flowing through there all the time. Daily care is definitely feeding them, keeping them clean. Tadpoles eat a lot. They've got a lot of growth, and metamorphosis takes a lot of energy and calories. So just keeping them fed, trying to make sure that they have a good, varied diet, and making sure that their water quality is up to snuff as well. Balancing pH, water hardness, all that. That's been my big project this last couple months, is getting that all just as good as it can be.
That's cool. I feel like that room is full of water and full of tubes and hoses going everywhere in that room.
And we're always changing to trying to find some way to tweak this or that and make it improve the process.
Yeah, really cool. All right, we're gonna talk about Borneo Eared Tree Frogs. Tell us, what is a Borneo Eared Tree Frog? Tell us a little bit about them, what they look like. Just describe them to us.
Absolutely. So they're, as the name implies, they're from the island of Borneo. They get the eared part of their name from this very distinctive bony ridge that is most prominent just above the ears, and it kind of extends to the base of their skull. They tend to have more of a natural earth tone color. Early in life, they have just this really striking wood grain pattern that obviously helps them blend in their natural environments because they live up in the canopies. But as they age, the pattern dims a bit, and they fade into a bit more of just a brown, but that pattern can still be on their legs and their sides. just really beautiful animals.
That's cool. Talk a little bit about size. How big is a Borneo eared tree frog? When we're selling them, adult size, how big are they?
So, we sell them when they're pretty young. They're 8 to 10 weeks usually, and they actually come out of the water fairly large for a froglet. They're almost a couple inches, sometimes even more than a couple inches when they morph.
That's cool.
And they'll usually be 2 to 2.5 by the time they're ready for sale. As adults, they're not the biggest frog. They're about medium. I'd say males tend to be about 3 to 3.5 inches long in adulthood, and females can get up to 4.5 inches, which is the bigger one in the back corner. Female, actually.
Yep. That's kind of interesting that they come out of the water so large and then don't end up being a ginormous frog.
It is strange, yeah. But again, that's one of the reasons I love them as tadpoles too, because they really big tadpoles, and then they just kind of don't grow a whole lot after that. They cram it all into that first part of their life phase.
That's cool. That's cool. Now compare and contrast them with some of the other tree frogs that are common in the hobby. Whites, tree frogs, red eyes. How are they similar or different than some of those guys?
Care wise, I'd say they're probably very similar to red eye tree frogs. Whites are a little bit more of a beginner level animal, and they're very handleable. These guys, you can handle them. They don't like it. They don't want you to hold them. And one cool thing about them is that they vocalize when they're in distress. So obviously you don't want to do that, but it's very startling. When I was a new keeper and I was first cleaning them, and one of them just kind of screamed at me because I was cleaning its tank and it didn't want me to. I went, yeah, that's one of the most distinctive things about them. But care-wise, fairly similar to a lot of our animals. Humidity and temperature, obviously, are the most essential things to master.
Cool. You talked about vocalization. Can you somehow describe what their call is like, maybe in comparison to some of the other tree frogs? How would you describe it? Louder, quieter, more barky, more insect-like? How would you describe it?
I would say it's more soft and subtle than a lot of them.
Really?
Barky might not be a bad way to describe. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at describing like vocal sounds.
Yeah.
Their call is very, very. If you were in the woods, you wouldn't really stop and be struck by it. I think it is that distress sound they make that's the most kind of startling and unique out of all the frogs I've worked with.
Cool. Cool. Talk to us a little bit about feeding. What are they eating, and size of prey? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. When they come out of the water, they're already eating 1/4-inch crickets. They're large froglets. General rule of thumb is any prey item that can fit kind of in the space between their eyes is a good size for them. Adults, we feed 3/4-inch to adult size crickets. Although, you can definitely use a little variety, maybe try offering them maybe a small silkworm or hornworm, something like that.
Cool.
But crickets are definitely the bread and butter here.
Cool. Talk a little bit about how we set them up here at Josh's Frogs, how we set up the tank, and then anything that would translate to how people would keep them in captivity in their home. So
yeah,
how do we
absolutely.
set them up?
I am always a proponent of bioactive animal keeping anytime you can. It's beautiful, great peace in your home, and better, more stimulating for the animals. And that's how we keep our adult breeders here at Josh's Frogs. We make sure to have a good layer of sphagnum moss on the ground. It helps to retain moisture. And then, planted pothos or snake plants or a variety of things if you wanted to get crazy and, have a naturalistic background with some bromeliads. They'd be a great candidate for that because they really like to climb. They're always, they go back and forth between the glass and the ground. So you'll see them moving around quite a bit, especially in the later hours of the day.
Cool. Now, I know like red eyes tend to sleep the entire day. Whites tend to be nocturnal but are active during the day. Like, where would you put Borneo Eared Frogs as far as activity during the daylight hours?
They're definitely nocturnal animals, but they are more active than, say, a red eye.
Yeah.
It's fairly common that I will walk in and be working near their enclosures, and 3/4 of them will be asleep, but there'll be a couple on the ground kind of looking and see what's going on, what's
cool.
moving out there. So,
That's cool.
Yeah, as far as nocturnal animals go, you'll see them moving more than a lot.
Cool. Now, talk to us about cage sizing. Like, what do you guys recommend for full adults, and what are you guys recommending for juveniles for cage sizing?
So for a full adult, we keep them in 18 by 18 by 24 exoteras.
Okay.
And I'd say that's a great size for 1 to 3 or 4, maybe, if you wanted to keep any more. If 4 would be pushing it, I might go to a 24 by 24 by 24 if you wanted a larger group. For the froglets, just a 10-gallon tank is going to be fine.
Cool.
They'll make use of every square inch of it, climbing all over the place, hanging out on the ground. So
cool.
I think for most animals, bigger is better. Just make sure it's not so big they can't find their food.
Yep. And I like that we're keeping them in naturalistic enclosures, so we're creating more surface area for them to climb on. So it just isn't the 4 sides of the tank in the bottom, but they have other stuff to climb on as well.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And again, more than a lot of our species, they will use all of it.
That's cool. That's really cool. Now, talk to us a little bit about breeding. How do you determine who's a male, who's a female, and walk us through the breeding process with those guys?
Yeah. So I want to tell you guys that it's this really complicated process, and I'm amazing because I can breed them. But God's honest truth is this is one of the easiest species to breed that we have. As far as sexing goes, the biggest and easiest thing to tell is just size. Males, like I said earlier, will usually reach 3 to 3.5 inches, whereas females can get up to 4.5. Females will also have a broader head, and the ridge is a little bit more defined, that bony structure that gives them their name.
Oh, cool.
That said, it can be a little difficult, especially when they're not fully grown, because unlike, say, whites, you don't get really nice nuptial pads or other indicators.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to wait to see how big they grow, and that's your best way to tell. But as far as actually breeding them, as long as you have several, we prefer 2 males to a female frog, just to increase their drive, their competition. Yeah, honestly, they will usually reproduce just on their own if their husbandry parameters are correct. And when they lay, it's really cool because I've never seen another species that does this. They have this. It sounds gross, but I promise it's not. It's called like a churned mucusy egg sac that they will lay, usually on the glass. In the wild, will be on leaves. But it kind of solidifies on the outside, and it has the texture of expanding foam when it's still midway through curing. And what it does is it helps protect those eggs and tadpoles, seal in moisture, and as it dissolves when they're ready to hatch, it actually provides them their first meal.
Interesting. So I like to describe it as just great stuff. It's very, very odd looking when you think about every other tree frog that's in our hobby. It's just totally different than that. Tell us a little bit about how long it takes for after they've laid that that egg clutch until they start hatching out of that. What's the time frame for that?
Usually about a week. We actually had a clutch hatch out last week, so I was very excited to get to watch that process again. Yeah, and the eggs will hatch over the course of a few days. It is more difficult to tell with them when it's done because that great stuff sac really conceals a lot of the activity going on in there.
Yep.
We've found that just making sure to occasionally gently mist the egg sac to keep it wet, as well as to let some water seep in there, is the best way to encourage the tadpoles to break out of there once they're matured and ready to go.
Now, that egg sac has to be laid over the top of water then. So, how are we setting them up to actually breed? Are we taking them outside of the cage then and putting them in a rain chamber?
Yes. If you're, if we were keeping them in a paludarium or something, they would likely try to lay their eggs directly over a body of water. But here in Josh's Frogs, we very gently remove the egg sac using a fine blade, just kind of going right up and under it to peel it away from the glass, which they very politely always lay it on the glass. And then I just put it in a tank on a little piece of egg crate
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure to prop it a few inches above the water. And like I said, I missed that. Make sure it doesn't get too dry in there. And they always hatch out just great.
That's cool. That's cool. Now tell us a little bit about clutch size. Like how many eggs are they producing? Like how much should you expect when you get a clutch of them?
I'd say 30 is about average. I've seen clutches go up to maybe 45, 50 tadpoles at a time. We've also had ones that, only 10 came out, but 30 is pretty standard, I'd say.
That's pretty small when it comes to some tree frogs. So
it is, yeah.
Especially their size.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of species will lay thousands.
Mm-hmm.
So it's surprising, but they seem to be hardy. So maybe that's how that works in the wild.
Yeah. And I'm wondering too if it's the foam nest, kind of keeps predators away, whereas you have some of the other big layers, probably a lot of the eggs that ends up getting eaten. So it makes sense.
I think you're right. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. You mentioned a little bit about temperature, humidity. What are the guidelines that we would give to people on temperature and humidity for these guys? Anything special?
Yeah. Humidity with frogs is always kind of the thing you have to get right above all else. They're from the island of Borneo, which is a tropical region. 60 to 70% humidity is about ideal. 80% is fine as long as it's well ventilated. The dance you always have to do is making sure to maintain high humidity but not let it get stagnant and promote mold growth. Temperature wise, they like it a little warmer than room temp. 75 to 80 is about the sweet spot for them. They can handle a little bit above 80, but if it's getting into the mid 80s, they might struggle because they're naturally living in the canopies of the trees. And it's,
cool.
It's cooler up there. There's lots of wind flow and whatnot.
Yep. Cool. All right. Talk a little bit about people keeping them as pets, like whether they're an easy frog, a mid-level frog, or something that's more difficult. And then any other tips or tricks you have for people when they're keeping those kinds of guys.
I would say probably mid-level. I mean, they're not exactly fragile, especially once they get into adulthood. But again, that balance of humidity is difficult for somebody who's very new to the hobby. I definitely recommend starting out with something like a whites first and then moving on to these guys. Don't expect a handleable animal is a big thing. They're beautiful. They're fun to watch, but they're more of a decorative pet. You can pull them out if you have to, but I wouldn't make a habit of them. They're very jumpy too. So if you're going to have to handle them, get your catcher's mitt because they're going to jump.
That's one of the things I like about the tree frog keepers here is you have to have really good reflexes.
Oh yeah,
unfortunately. Cool. All right. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on the Borneo Eared Frogs. Appreciate that. Let's move on to a lightning round questions. I'm going to give you the questions. Give us the first thing that pops to your mind. And then you can pass if you want, but just give us the first thing that pops into your mind. So, all right. If money and space were no issue, what's the dream pet that you would have?
So I feel like I usually say a large monitor lizard because that's always been a lifelong obsession. But I'm actually very close to being prepared to take home a pair of crocodile skinks. So
cool.
that's my obsession of the week right now.
That's cool.
So I'm going to go with crocodile skinks.
Cool. Yeah, those are awesome. And we need to do a podcast on those. All right. Besides Josh's Frogs, what's another brand that's doing really cool stuff or another breeder that's breeding really cool animals? Who do you want to give a shout out to?
I'm going to go with MistKing today.
Cool.
They make our lives as frog keepers just so much easier. You can program dozens of tanks to be misted on a timer, and it saves us a lot of work.
Cool. All right, favorite animal or plant in the entire world? What's something really cool that you've stumbled across lately?
I'm gonna have to say Parasaurolophus. It's my favorite dinosaur. It has been since I was wee high. So,
all right, I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. What's your favorite animal that is actually alive right now? What's your favorite animal or plant?
Saltwater crocodile. They are just amazing.
Those are beasts of animals.
They are.
All right. You have an hour of free time. What are you doing with that hour of free time? No one's bothering you. The kids are away. What are you doing?
Depending on energy levels, the kids being away, and that's a big one. Sometimes I'll just sit and play my guitar on the back porch, maybe play some video games if I'm just beat. Or, I've got a pile of hobbies that are always stacking up. So maybe working on some home brewing or something like that.
Cool. All right. Last question. You got a bunch of people listening to you. You have their ear. What's one piece of advice or one thing you'd like people to remember when they're listening to this podcast right now?
Ooh. Man, just take life one day at a time. It's all going to be okay. Everybody mellow.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thanks for having me.
You may have seen Rick on some of our other podcasts. He's done some other lives and other videos and some of the writing that we do here as well, too. So check out some of his stuff. And thanks a lot again for educating us, Rick. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoy this content and want to stay up to date, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us across social media. We always want to bring you the best content, so let us know what you think in the comments. And for all your reptile and amphibian needs, be sure to check us out at joshsfrogs.com. We have an amazing selection. Until next time, stay curious, stay froggy, and keep exploring.